I'm Matt Adams. I'm one of the co-founders of Blast Theory. We're a group of artists based in Brighton in the UK, and we make interactive projects. For about 20 years, we've been exploring how technology might enable us to tell stories in new ways and engage audiences in new places. We've always tried to look at where technology is going and what that might mean for culture and storytelling. And at the moment, we're really fascinated by big data. There's a belief that large amounts of data gives greater intelligence or greater knowledge, and that may not be the case. It's a massive social change. I think it's our job to try and get in among those changes and pose questions about it and unpick it. In the last year or 18 months, there have been a number of interesting contributions to the debate that critique the idea of big data and expose some of the limitations of that approach.
Any recordings you make will be stored in the system and may be used for archival or documentary purposes.
We're all familiar with big data as used by large companies like Google and Facebook. We're trying to think about what big data might mean for storytelling and those of us who work in culture. The promise of big data is that corporations and governments have ever greater degree of understanding about the people who use their services and their ability to tailor those services to that individual. I'm very interested to try and explore that territory, try to think about how gathering data about someone and reflecting it back to them might be a way to tell stories in a new way. In the project that we're developing now, Karen, we are working to see whether we can do profiling and personalization as part of an experience. When you launch the app, you meet Karen. She chats to you and asks you questions, and you can type answers to her. As she gets to know you, she adapts to what you want to know, what things might be valuable to you. In the background, we're using a bunch of psychological tests. As Karen chats to you, we're building up knowledge about you, and we're then adapting the story in relation to those outcomes. So we're really trying to take this interaction to another level to try and stretch it even further so that we can understand more about you and adapt the story to you, and at the same time critique and expose some of those systems and approaches. Another one of our projects that inspired us in terms of the work we're doing today was called Ivy Forever. The brief was to engage with teenagers, particularly teenagers who might not have access to the internet as easily as some. It's an SMS drama that you interact with over the course of a week. Ivy is a character who starts texting you as if you're a friend of hers, and she becomes an intimate confidant for young teenagers to explore some of their ideas in a very private way. And our research, the studies that we did on that project, really showed that you had very high levels of engagement. In traditional storytelling, we think of a protagonist that the audience relates to. In the kinds of stories that we're telling, you become the protagonist. The story is about you, and you are engaging directly with the lead character and becoming a lead character in the story. And I think that's a whole new area of storytelling that we're only beginning to explore. I think the wider relevance of the work that we're doing is to act as pathfinders for thinking about how far we can go in personalizing culture to audiences. It's exploded massively in the last few years, what you can do, how stories can be told. Some of the innovations that have happened on the web and through apps in particular have stretched massively the idea of how we're involved in projects. If you think about where we might get to in 10 or 20 or 30 years' time, in terms of how much we understand about each individual audience member as they come to engage with the story, there is a potential there to do things that we have only just begun to tiptoe into. So I think whatever branch of storytelling you're in, if you're using digital media, you're starting to tailor the story, you're starting to hone it in some ways. The question we're asking is just how far could that go, and what might be the implications of that